into digital art, and we started to wonder why. So we thought that there was a lot of interest for women and like non-digital artists, if you wanted to put it like that, on actually understanding how they can start in the industry, among other different things. So we thought that was a really good idea to invite experts on the field to actually like open up and have a discussion with different participants that are just curious in knowing more about the industry, as well as the nitty-gritty details of the industry. So this conversation, we of course have like certain questions that we have on the pipeline, but ideally, if you have any questions, feel free to post it on the chat or unmute yourself and make the questions, because this is really helpful for us as well to just like guide the conversation. And it can be as technical as you want and as non-technical as like the very beginning, or like how to create an NFT, if that is what you want to discuss. So just please feel free to make the question that you feel that it will be worth it to discuss. There's not dumb questions. We are recording, so this is going to be also available in the YouTube channel of the Validvent. And then just for the sake of like knowing who is in the room, it will be great if you can just like add your names and the company that you represent, or if you're a freelancer, or if you are a digital artist on the chat, so we can also like customize in which direction do we go. And with that note, I will hand over to Lorna from Talos, who is also like a partner on this AMA session. On that note, also like thank you very much to our different partners for this, so Talos, World of Women, and FRAMEIT, besides Validvent, for allocating time to do an AMA session. And now, for real, Lorna, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Mariana. Thank you so much for inviting me. So my name's Lorna Hutchman. I lead marketing for EMEA for Talos. We are a technology layer for institutions who want to trade digital assets. And so my sort of relationship to the topic is more from a personal capacity. I've always been really interested in digital art. And actually the concept of NFTs was the reason that I got into the space almost 3 years ago now. It was a time where a lot of my friends who are creatives were going through the motions of COVID. A lot of them were out of work, and this concept of NFTs really was just mind-blowing to me in ways that it could support the creator economy. So enough about me on this session. I'd love to hand over to our panelists today. Shelley, why don't you introduce yourself and the company that you're coming from today?
Sure. Hi, I'm Shelley. I am a product lead at World of Women. So World of Women started out as an NFT project in July of 2021. It was founded by an artist, Yam Karkai, so a woman artist, who were extremely rare in the space at that time. And what Yam recognized is that there was very little representation of women in Web3 in the visual culture of Web3. There were no major NFT projects that represented women, and she created World of Women specifically to address that. So since then, World of Women has grown into a worldwide community, and we do lots of different activities to support artists and to support women in different ways. So really, we are about creating visibility to recognize the accomplishments of women, both in tech and in art. And we also create, wherever we can, opportunities for both women artists and women builders and entrepreneurs, so that they can kind of make their mark.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Elisabeth, why don't you go next?
I very much hope that you can hear me. My internet connection is really bad. I hope it works.
I think we've lost you, Elisabeth. I'm not sure if you want to leave and rejoin the room. Oh, she's doing that anyway.
Just doing that, yeah.
All good. We can come back to Elisabeth. Shelley, I'm going to pick on you for a little bit then while we're waiting for her. So in terms of your journey into the digital art space, can you talk us through like what you've been doing and what you've been up to until the point of World of Women?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a trained art historian, but always in the context of digital, I guess my whole career has kind of been characterized by different generations of digital technology. So when I first kind of finished university with my art history degree was around the time that kind of Web 2 was taking off. So I participated in kind of that first, big boom and bust, and now I'm participating in that again, right? In the context of Web3, I think one of the things that you are going to chat with us about, Lorna, is what we saw, over the course of the last couple of years in Web3, right? Specifically in digital art, which it isn't unlike what we saw in Web2, right? The sort of .com boom and then the .com bust. So. After working for a few startups and agencies as a web developer and a web designer, then I moved on to museums. And that's really my passion. So it was nice to be able to kind of go back into museums. I worked at the British Museum for almost a decade, again, in digital technology. So the work that I did there was largely kind of in digital learning specifically. And that gave me the opportunity and autonomy to be able to work with external artists and creators to design different kinds of programs for visitors who are coming to the museum. So what I found working on that is that technology is incredibly cyclical. One of the most interesting kind of cycles, I think, that I saw over my kind of career at the British Museum was around augmented reality. So augmented reality was something that we started working with earlier on. We designed the first AR application in a UK museum, and what I kind of observed was the way sort of the adoption curve, and the way in which the AR technology specifically was enabling artists in different ways to create new kinds of experiences, and interact, right? Both with their traditional art, so the type of art that was displayed in the museum, but also the kind of digital art that they were creating. So yeah, so that was an interesting experience. And as I say, after working for museums for a while, I moved into the private sector. Then I kind of saw another big technology shift which was digital photography.
Yeah.
And mobile phones, and massive impact, obviously, similar, I think, to what kind of NFTs and Web3 have the potential to do, although haven't really broken through into the consumer space in the way, obviously, that digital photography has done. But yeah, joined Web3 in 2019 through a startup called Verisart. Verisart worked with traditional artists and onboarding them onto Web3. And I think this definitely is where our two stories sort of intersect, Lorna, is that we both experienced the opportunities that Web3 was creating for artists, particularly artists who really were looking to kind of diversify their creative practice, right? And not only that, but diversify their revenue streams. Because regardless of whether you're talking about traditional artists working in traditional medium or digital artists working in, kind of Web3, AI, and other digital medium, ultimately, kind of the core question is, how can I support myself through my creative practice, right?
Absolutely. And there's another layer on top of that, because I actually came from the museum sector as well. I worked with the Science Museum for a number of years. So yeah, it's a funny but quite common path, I think, diverge out into the tech sector. Elisabeth, you're back.
I'm so sorry. The internet connection is so bad. And maybe hi everyone. Maybe I'll just turn off the camera for now, because maybe I'll show if that's okay. I'll turn it on again later on.
Yeah, of course.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, don't worry. Don't worry at all. We were just asking Shelley about her journey, how she got to the point she is today, and maybe you want to answer the same.
Yes, of course. So my husband introduced me to NFTs and digital ownership about 2022. And he has been involved in it for a long time. So, and I bought my first voucher in 2022. It was my first NFT. And I was just fascinated by the opportunity for digital art and to have digital art's uniqueness. So to have something unique and digital, because as I was studying exhibition development and art history, and so it just fascinated me the opportunity for art to get unique.
Nice. Two historians in the room. Moving on to the questions there, and just a reminder, if anyone does have any of their own questions, either unmute yourself and fire away, or if you want to use the chat, either or. But one of the questions I had was, how has digital art shifted post the 2021 NFT hype? What are some of the new advancements in the space? Shelley, do you want to take that one?
Sure, although I'm interested to hear Elisabeth's view on this too. The most obvious thing, right, is that we've gone through a bear market, right? I mean, for me, that's like the most obvious thing, right? So it's dramatically impacted the market, right? And the valuations of works, how easy it is, or was to sell artwork. In 2021 and sort of during that period, sort of early 2021 is where, at least from where I sat as the chief product officer at Verisart, company that was working with community of artists, things started exploding right around NFTs at the beginning of 2020 and just ramped up all the way sort of, through 2021, kind of reaching their height around the time that World of Women launched its collection in July 2021. And that, from that point, I mean, I would say probably from early 2022, around the time we launched our second collection, which was World of Women Galaxy in early 2022, we began to hit the bear market. And so kind of valuation, there was a real shift in the market itself. And that also had an impact on some of the places where NFT art was selling, right? Web3 art was selling. So when I think about the marketplaces that characterize that first generation, OpenSea and Super Rare, kind of were the ones that were really standouts in the early days. And then Blur came onto the scene, right? And that really shifted kind of dramatically things almost, in favor of kind of trading, right? And change the kind of the nature of our relationship with, with kind of collectors and the types of, I think, more direct experiences with one-of-one art that kind of Super Rare in particular was kind of working towards. So I think that was one of the major changes. Obviously, that also meant some changes with respect to royalties, right? Because royalties were one of the biggest promises of what this new blockchain art technology was, blockchain was going to bring to art and the art market. And so losing royalties on Blur and the kind of the way in which there was a real divide in the community around royalties was I think also something that kind of really changed and shifted. I mean, in terms of trends, like you mentioned what kind of newer technologies that came onto the scene, right? I mean, I think there was a real shift towards generative art, right? So generative art sort of started to come forward more, and also different blockchains, right? So while Ethereum dominated those early days, then other more inexpensive and potentially easier to use blockchains like Solana started really to come on, and I think provide lots of new opportunities for artists to do things and experiment more inexpensively. And then more recently, ordinals, right? It feels like that's kind of a little bit where we are now, with ordinals really being a kind of an interesting an interesting trend. So yeah, curious to hear your perspective, Elisabeth.
Yes. Thank you, Shelley, for your perspective. So I think the NFT hype, has obviously come and go, but what remains is really the benefit of digital art. And I mean, For digital artists, this is just invaluable as it offers the opportunity to make it unique because that's never been before. So this can be seen in various sales, for example, also like in auction houses, NFT sales for millions, like the Ringers collection or stuff like that. And I think this is important to see for digital artists because it's more than PFP projects. PFP projects are great. They're community driven and great to see. But what really matters, so not what matters, but what really you can see really clearly now is that digital art is just something that really can be collected and people love and like, and the prices go up. And I think this, and everybody is talking about it. So I think this is what changed, because the NFT hype mainly was because of the PFP projects. And I think this is also important to have these communities, of course, but just to see what really is the benefit on blockchain technology for the art scene is just great. And I think this is more and more, people get more and more to know this is just where it will go, I guess, also as community token, but mostly for the digital art scene.
Great. Thank you for that, Elisabeth. And Shelley, you mentioned the advent of Gen AI in that sort of post-NFT hype. We've had a really great question from Tatiana in the chat. And Tatiana has asked, how does the fast developing Gen AI image and other generation capability impact digital art? Should we see Gen AI as a tool or competition? And Shelley, if you want to go first, and then Elisabeth, add your thoughts.
Yeah, such a great question, Tatiana. Thank you for asking. So we ran an event here in London for Digital Art Week on Wednesday, so a week ago, that addressed specifically this topic. So the sentiments from artists seem to be a little bit split, right? I mean, there isn't a simple or straightforward answer to your question. It kind of depends on your perspective. So what I would say is that we had artists on the panel who were specifically talking about the benefits of AI, right? In particular, so Claudia Tong was one of our panelists. So she's a CXT_art. So I encourage you to follow her on Twitter. And Claudia was describing the way in which AI augments creativity. That's the way she described it. And I thought that was very well put. So for her, augmenting creativity means it sort of gives you maybe like a thought partner when you're kind of ideating, right, in the early processes of art, or it allows you to sort of generate images that you might find use as inspiration for your art, right? So it's not replacing you as the artist in terms of the original concept or ideas. It's really just providing a support, right? It's extending your capabilities. The other point made by one of the other panelists, so Victoria Emsley, who is an actress, a creator, an artist, and an activist. So her point was that the other way in which AI is helping artists is through allowing them to do admin more easily, right? Some of the tasks that artists really, in general, right, don't like because it takes their time away from their artistic practice. And so it helps them to, say, generate descriptions of works, to kind of help manage their finances, help plan things out, right? Maybe project plan or budget, or for a large scale project, right? Lots of things that maybe some artists find challenging and, aren't able to hire assistants to help them with. An AI assistant can support them there. So the other things that we discussed on the panel was the way in which AI especially helps neurodiverse artists. So there are certain things that, you know, are really challenging for people who are neurodiverse. And again, AI kind of can support them in some of those tasks, whether, you know, it involves kind of crunching numbers or taking on lots of data or having to respond to lots of messages or do social media posts. Those things can sometimes be really challenging. So again, AI obviously has lots of benefits. And it is really is a tremendous tool. However, right, there are also major sort of disadvantages or challenges associated with AI. One of the topics that we discussed at length last week was the representation and bias, right? So particularly for generative AI, those algorithms that have been trained on models which are not representative then generate images which are not representative. So there were some really interesting comments by some of the panelists, both on the panel that I facilitated, but also on one that was facilitated by Abigail Miller from Avant Art, and a performance artist, Una, who participated in that panel, was talking about the fact that a lot of AI generative imagery creates this sort of idealized image of the female body. And for her, that's hugely problematic, right? Like, you know, for her, she's like, you know, you see all these like voluptuous, you know, sort of Lara Croft looking, you know, kind of bodies. And for her, that, you know, there's just a degree of unreality to that. Which she found highly problematic. So anyway, those are just a few of the things that sort of came out, as I say, in some interesting conversations that we had last week. It's a great question.
Yeah, and that angle of the sort of admin cleanup is quite interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, for a lot of freelancers now, they are the artist, they're the marketer, they're the advertiser. So yeah, using AI in that way does really just let the artist be to focus on the art, I should say. Elisabeth, do you want to add some thoughts here?
Yes, just a short answer, but I think one of the greatest things about AI is, or the greatest thoughts, it's art has always been not just a skill, but not just a technique, but also an idea and kind of it's immaterial, the spirit of art, if you know what I mean. And I think AI is a great tool to work with, just to transport your ideas and to make it depends on how to use it, and you can see it in the art if it's something that it came from the artist or just from the tool. You can see it, I think. And this is always, it's like the brush and the canvas. It's what you can do with it. You can also learn to paint like Michelangelo, but it's just the technique. The idea is what matters. And I think this is how we should think about AI gen art. Yes.
That's great, and I love that point you made as well, about it just augmenting as opposed to replacing. Really strong. Do keep the questions coming in the chat, and thank you for that, Tatiana. Really nice one you put in. A question from me on the sort of economics of NFTs and the NFT market. To what extent has the advancement of the NFT market created more opportunities, particularly for female artists to sell their work? Elisabeth, do you want to take that one first of all?
Yes, so I think for female artists, the digital space has the advantage that they can present their work to a broad audience that is also be kind of receptive. It's also because it's worldwide, and you have the opportunity to just without any so like the NFT space is young and modern, I think, and the people are all open. So of course there's exceptions, but in general it's just an opportunity to showcase their art, and also beyond the traditional art market. And I think this is a great opportunity for female artists, because it's sadly in the traditional art market, yeah, it's female artists doesn't have really a chance. What's I think it's just worse because we are in the 21st century, but that's the fact. And I think the digital art space had so much more open-minded people, but this is from my perspective. Yeah. Shelley, maybe you can answer these questions more.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? I think it's still tough for women artists, right? I mean, I think a lot of the challenges haven't necessarily gone away. However, I think, look, anonymity is one interesting thing. So, you know, I do think that women can benefit from, you know, from the anonymity that, or the sort of pseudo anonymity that often exists in Web3. Like, I think it's less, yeah, I mean, yeah, interesting to have a conversation about this. But for me, it's less about them not necessarily revealing that they're female, you know, or that they're a woman, but it's almost more about them being able to put like something in front of them that allows them to express themselves kind of more confidently, or more freely, or more kind of to do or say things that perhaps, you know, that kind of social norms normally, you know, are very constraining for women in terms of, you know, the way in which, you know, we have to express ourselves. And, you know, I think Barbie captured this well, right? It's kind of like, you know, no matter what you do, you can't be, you know, if you're too overconfident, you're considered pushy. If you're not confident enough, you're, you know, kind of, you know, shy or not assertive enough, right? Like we're often in this pickle, right? Of, you know, kind of how to, you know, how to sort of behave. So I think that sort of pseudo anonymity is quite helpful and can potentially be quite freeing. I guess that's one of the reasons why I find Una's work quite fun and interesting. And I put a link to an article from her work. She is an anonymous artist, and you know, kind of going back to Guerrilla Girls. It's like what was so successful about them, you know, putting gorilla masks on. You know, it really gave them the freedom to be hugely provocative, right? And so I think there's a degree to which that anonymity potentially helps. I do think one of the other characteristics of Web3 about being able to go direct to collectors and have a direct relationship is healthy. I have mixed sort of feelings about, you know, going too far and removing, you know, the curator, or removing, you know, those who kind of facilitate, you know. Very interested to hear your view about this, Elisabeth, because I do feel that those who are kind of facilitating in the art world are in my experience, often incredibly well-intentioned and actually really well-placed to help women artists and to support them and to give both recognition and platform to their work. However, I think, you know, whenever you have things opening up and becoming more democratized, which is what Web3 provides, then it increases the number of opportunities that exist, right? So the fact that it is possible and easier in Web3 for artists to develop a direct connection with collectors, it is beneficial. So yeah, maybe over to you, Elisabeth, because I'm really curious to hear what you think about, you know, what is the role kind of curators and you know, galleries in Web3.
Thank you so much. You're perfectly right. This is a good question, because this is also what FRAMEIT wants to do. We are here for help. So first of all, we are collectors for ourselves. So I'm an art collector, digital art collector. My colleagues are. And I think this is, of course, I see myself also as a curator. But first of all, I wanted to help and guide artists to showcase their work. So this is what we aim to do. And the main goal for FRAMEIT is to bring collectors and artists in a real life space together. because someone has to know both sides, and someone has to know what does artists need and what does collectors need, and how can we put this together. And artists are often they just don't know how to present them and their work. It's not about what's right or wrong, but just to they are often shy, or they don't art is something really personal. And I think some of the artists, especially female artists, are just sometimes shy to show their art, because of course it's a part of them, because it's very personal, and it should be. And I think our goal and our how we can guide this is to help them to show themselves in a good and positive way, and just lift them up and say, wow, that's great what you do, and just show it. I think sometimes this is all you need, and I think this is how we can just grow together. This is how I see FRAMEIT, and how I see a space for digital art, to just connect the people, and yeah, I think this is
It goes back to that point about the anonymity as well. You know, there is a sense of vulnerability sometimes with showcasing your work. And you spoke, Shelley, about democratizing the art and the accessibility around AI and Gen AI. We had a really interesting follow-up question from Tatiana in the chat about just that. So Tatiana has asked, what's your take on Gen AI democratizing / opening up the digital art space to people who might not have had the skills previously, and potentially flooding the market and impacting the valuations, or making it harder for a potential buyer to sort through what is available, to find what captures their attention, and what are your views? We'll start with the first part of that, which is the skills and opening up skills. And Shelley, why don't you take that one first of all?
Yeah, so this is not a bad thing, right? I mean, honestly, for me, the fact that AI provides tools that kind of opens things up for more creative production can only be a good thing, right? Because you know, I just inherently believe, right, that kind of we are creative beings, and you know, and encouraging people to express their creativity is positive. To use a specific example, and maybe another shout out to a really interesting artist, Mini Gabby World. So again, I'll put the link in the chat. But she's an animator and creator. She has created this whole kind of world around her character called Gabby, and one of the things that she and I were speaking about recently is the fact that AI has allowed her to almost become her own animation studio, right? So a lot of the things that she previously needed to hire people to do, or to find resources in order to, you know, kind of have done for her, she can now do herself, because she's using generative AI and other types of, you know, of technology. So she's a perfect example for me of where, you know, it's an incredibly positive development, right? It's another example of augmentation, right? So it makes her creativity become, you know, it more expansive, because she can do more. I'm hugely respectful, though, of some of the other points that you mentioned. I think we'll probably come on to those next, won't we, Lorna? So I'll leave it there for now and hand over to Elisabeth.
So I think so. If I understand it right, the question was what democratizing AI. Sorry, can you just repeat the question?
Yeah,
The
of course.
original question. Thank you.
So it was more so just your take on the fact that Gen AI can democratize the art, and just improve accessibility for folks who might not necessarily have had the opportunity to get involved in the art space.
To get involved in that. Um, tough question, yeah. Yeah, Shelley already said some things. I think, yeah, I don't really know.
Yeah, no, don't worry at all. That it's more just your
Yeah,
views on it, but I know you're echoing Shelley and her sentiment there.
yeah.
And I think the next part of that question from Tatiana was basically, asking about the impact of potentially now flooding the market because it's so open and everyone can get involved. What's our views on the sort of the impact of the number of players, I would say. And Shelley, why don't you start with that one, and then Elisabeth, if you want to feed in.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, again, I don't think that necessarily the increased number of creators is necessarily problematic. It might be a little scary from the point of view of artists, who might at this point feel anxious about it. But I think inevitably, right, kind of serious trained artists, or untrained, but serious artists, people who are really dedicated to kind of their creative expression, will always be original and unique, right? So I don't think that simply the fact that we are encouraging other people to be creative with this technology necessarily means that it doesn't diminish what they do in any sense at all. I think your point is clearly how do we, as collectors, how do we distinguish? And that's a really excellent point. I mean, one of the ways in which we were addressing this at VerisArt was to provide certificates of authenticity for work. So this is especially relevant for living artists. So we were focused on the challenge of authenticating work, and particularly the artists behind it. So the idea is that, which was frequently misunderstood, because often I think NFTs are perceived as proof of authenticity in and of themselves. And of course, that's not true, right? If what it proves is ownership. That is what an NFT registers on the blockchain, right? Is who owns that piece of work. It's effectively a deed of ownership, but it's not a certificate of authenticity. So there's no reason why I couldn't copy someone's work and create an NFT from it, and you'd have an accurate record of who had owned that kind of, that fake work, right? So yeah, that's one of the ways in which we were addressing it at VerisArt. And I know there were a few other initiatives, like Adobe is formed a consortium with several other, sort of large companies, right? Is it called the kind of, I don't know, Open Authenticity Initiative, I think it's called. Again, to address kind of those questions through standards, right? Through authenticating and authentication standards. So that's definitely one way. I do think that's another area where curators, right, and art, whether we call them art dealers or kind of other art professionals, maybe is a good way of putting it, are especially helpful there, right? Because they do know the artist personally, they are involved and have seen the process of making, right? Like they can help you distinguish. And so I think both those art world professionals, but also, other artists recommending other artists are some of the best ways to kind of distinguish from the point of view of a collector. I'll just add one minor point at the end. I don't think it's a minor point, but I think they're an interesting topic to unpack is the proliferation of AI generated images in the visual culture. Right. So, I mean, it's a far broader question than I think, the one that kind of we're addressing here, which is specifically about, how do you distinguish whether, a piece of art has, kind of is authentic, is it created by an artist, who actually engaged in the process of making, or, is it simply somebody just, throwing a bunch of images into an AI model and generating that based on, kind of, somebody else's style. But anyway, I think, yeah, the proliferation of AI imagery in visual culture is a really interesting topic to discuss, but maybe one that kind of reaches a little bit beyond what we're discussing today.
That's webinar number 2 for sure. Thank you, Shelley. Elisabeth, anything to add to that?
Just one small thing to add. I think this is also something great about curators or a space where you can come. It doesn't have to be curators, but a kind of community to just get help finding collectors and also to reach people. It's not only and to stand out. And you have this problem in the digital space, as you have it in the traditional art scene. This is a problem that has been there for since art exists, and I think it's just different because you need to have this authentication. You need to reach the people, and it's always the same thing. And you need someone to just help you with this, or just to yeah, also a community or other artists, as you said, Shelley. I think this is the greatest support for artists, other artists that recommend you or lift up your work, and I think this is the most important thing for artists. Yeah.
I'm glad you touched on community. So we've got about 15 minutes left, and I do want to spend the majority of that. First question, Elisabeth, how is the community, pardon me, in the digital art space different from the community in the traditional or contemporary art space?
I think the interesting thing about the digital space is, so the primary difference is in fact that the digital space originally comes from the gamer and the tech side. So these people have learned to love digital, like produced art, just from a technical side, and to also appreciate this aesthetics. And they do not come from a traditional academic art bubble, and that distinguishes the way they view art. And I think this is really different because you have this all traditional art bubble things like yeah, it has been for 300 years or stuff like that. And so the people they originally come from, the art collectors, are just gamers or tech people, and they never collected traditional art. And I think this is a great opportunity to just see art and digital art, especially digital art, from another view, from another point of view. And this is quite interesting because I think art is always something that has to be new and has to be something that's never seen before or on another view, and otherwise it's stuck. And I think the traditional art market is stuck because you have always the same ideas, always the same production of artworks, and I think this is a great opportunity for the art world as a whole, to look at the NFT space and how collectors engage with artists, and how they collect art, and how they show their art, and how they celebrate the art. And I think this is so special on this space, in this space. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. It totally welcomes that diversity of thought, right? Shelley, anything to add to that?
Well, I know one of the questions that you had prepared, Lorna, which you may be about to get onto, but I feel like I'll just jump in, is about communities that we'd recommend. So communities that would be helpful for artists to get involved in. So I wanted to call out Hug. So it's thehug.xyz. So this is a startup community for artists that was founded by Randy Zuckerberg and Deb Soon. And they've been going for a few years now. And I think we as at World of Women, we partnered with them on a couple of projects recently. And in particular, what I have found is that they're really beginning to nail it. I think creating a kind of a community initiative for artists is really tough. One of the earlier projects that I saw in this area and loved was called Marcel for Art, which unfortunately no longer exists, again, because, they couldn't quite get volume and momentum and, just kind of enough and enough funding to be able to continue. But I think the idea of building a community of artists, which is really about education and opportunity, and helping this kind of generation of artist entrepreneurs to be successful, I think is super interesting, because artists really, for the first time, are maybe kind of needing to fully embrace technology. Again, that was one of the points I think that came up at over Digital Art Week here in London over the past week, is really the in the Avant Art panel, Abigail was making the point that, if you are an artist these days, you have to embrace technology, or you are likely not going to be successful, right? You can't ignore it or neglect it. It's just, a fact of life now. To become, a successful artist, you really do have to begin to understand and embrace the technological tools. So anyway, back to Hug. As I say, what I see that they're successfully doing is building a really healthy and helpful community for artists. And it's free to join. You can create a profile there, and then you get access to be able to enter their open calls. So that's as I say, that's one of the areas in which we've collaborated with them. So World of Women has issued 2 open calls through Hug. We had 300 submissions for the first one, which were artworks that could be exhibited at our gala. So we run an annual gala. It was in February of this year. I think, did you attend, Elisabeth? You did, didn't you? Yeah.
Yes, I did.
So we when kind of you came into gala, there was an exhibition sort of display on the left-hand side, near the place where people were taking photographs as they came in, and we had work exhibited there. We had about 30 works from that open call, in addition to then our quarterly art festival. Art Fest. We had those works also being displayed. But I think, as I say, what has really struck me about the open calls that Hug are issuing is that it's just a constant stream of opportunities for artists. And they're consolidating opportunities that in the past, I think, were probably really dispersed over lots and lots and lots of different places. So what I recognized was that there was an absolute need for those opportunities to sort of be aggregated by someone. And I think Hug is doing a very good job of that. And one of the most exciting opportunities that I saw come across there recently was for AI artists and artists, using AI sort of heavily in their work, to create some images for a new L'Oreal, kind of product that was launching, a hair care product. And the artists who won that call were flown to Los Angeles, right? And they got to participate in the launch event. And it was just such a tremendous opportunity for visibility for those artists. So, and I guess one of the other things that I'm appreciative of what Hug are doing is allowing artists to sort of self-identify, if they belong to a particular group, if they are a woman artist, right? Or if they come from a particular background, or if they are, LGBTQIA, they can self-identify. And again, I think there's been some sensitivity, around those kinds of issues, right? And also potentially some sort of discomfort about self-identifying. But I think Hug has sort of is making it safe, right? And then also making it safe, both safe for artists to declare themselves, but also easier for those who are, say, curating exhibitions or really wanting to promote women artists, or to, kind of to promote underrepresented artists, and to include them, easier to find them.
Yeah, I love that about, having this platform that's aggregating the data, because I imagine historically those initiatives or competitions would live in various forums and various corners of the internet. So having it in that one central place, again, goes back to that point about accessibility. Elisabeth, I don't suppose you have any perhaps European focused initiatives or even global initiatives or communities that you'd like to shout out?
Actually, here in Vienna, we does have the Crypto Wiener community. It's a really small community, but it was one of the first art blocks projects. The Crypto Wiener are crypto punks for themselves, and it's just a local community, but we just meet each other regularly and talking about NFTs, what's going on here, and they're all artists and support also each other. We do some exhibitions here local in Vienna and in some cities here in Austria. And just to let the people know what's going on in the digital art scene. And people are sometimes very traditional just to come and chat with the people in real life because they just love it and they just like it and they want to know the artists really personal. And this is so important. And I think this is the great this is also where how FRAMEIT came to life. To be honest, it was the idea of just being together in real life and talking about all this stuff because it's so important. And I think I really want to shout out to them because they are very, it's not about, yeah, they are just some friends who bring this whole crypto art scene to life for the people living here. And I think this is amazing. And of course, the second one is World of Women, because I think it's just great what World of Women do. And yeah, it's unique in this space. It's really unique to just be supportive, be friendly and happy about art and about community. And I think this is so important. And yeah, I think especially when women lead this, because we're just we're good in this. So I think that's great and I love it.
Great stuff. So yeah, some really nice hyper local examples and then bigger global examples as well. And Shelley, I can see you've dropped the Hug website in the chat there, so we can include that also in the follow-up notes of this one. Final question for you both. In what ways are you finding joy and community in your work right now? Elisabeth, do you want to take that first of all?
So yeah, I love to work with people. They are innovative and so with people that are innovative and motivated themselves and love the community. And I love this aspect on working in Web3 because there's so many people that just want to bring the spirit everywhere and just to have this kind of freedom for artists and yeah, really love what they're doing and live it. And I think this is just the greatest thing about my work and I'm so happy to be now in this whole thing. Yeah, be
Thank you.
supportive. It's just when you are in the traditional art scene, you're not very supported and not supportive, and people are not supportive because it's just very challenging. And I think, yeah, it's difficult to be in this digital art scene and crypto art scene, but the people are supportive. And this is just amazing, I think.
Shelley, any final thoughts from you?
I just wanted to really echo what Elisabeth has said. I completely agree that one of the most enjoyable things about my role at World of Women is discovering and kind of meeting and becoming friends with, really, these incredible women, especially those who are kind of this new, I guess. I'm not sure how new it is. I think artists have always had to be entrepreneurs, right? They've always been kind of business people to a degree. But I think it seems what I see increasingly are multiple disciplines coming together in the entrepreneurship, right? And so a couple of artists, just to shout out to Shreya Ban, who is a fashion designer, an artist, a founder. So she founded her own fashion brand, which is called Brushbound. And again, she's bringing together, her design experience with, NFTs and NFC chips, and, kind of bringing the technology and the art, art and artistry and design together. And also Leah Ibrahim Sams from Power of Women. So again, founder of her own NFT project, but she's also then launching kind of a fashion collection, clothing collection next month. And I was lucky enough to get a kind of a preview of some of her soon to launch collection last week, and it's phenomenal. Really, it's amazing. So as I say, for me, that's just bringing so much joy to see these ladies extend their creativity into across multiple disciplines, and that I find incredibly exciting.
Lovely. It's a great note to end on. Shelley, Elisabeth, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all of you who have tuned in as well and added your questions in the chat. Really great session. And please do follow up with the links that Shelley and Elisabeth have provided and check out some of those communities as well. Thank you both. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much. Look forward to your web what is it, 2.0, the next session.
Hopefully.
Thank you, everybody. And with that, we can close, I guess.
Yeah. Thank you. And sorry again for the internet problems.
No worries. See you guys. Bye.
Bye.